Today's scripture lesson is taken from Job chapter 39, verses 13 through 18. The ostrich flaps her wings futilely, all those beautiful feathers, but useless. She lays her eggs on the hard ground, leaves them in the dirt, exposed to the weather, not caring that they might get stepped on and cracked or trampled by some wild animal. She is negligent with her young as if they were not even hers. She cares nothing about anything. She was not created very smart, that is for sure. Was not even her share of good sense. But when she runs, oh, how she runs, laughing and leaving horse and rider in the dust.
And because we had baptism, which is almost like for our children, and at the same time I tried to put the sermon into a little bit of like a children message format, I thought that I can start with our children time jingle. And dear friends, we are talking about the wisdom literature from the Bible when we read from book of Job. And this time I need to be a little bit of critical because there is so much which is actually not true from what we heard from the book of Job. It's full of ancient stereotypes about ostriches. You probably know that saying that putting your head into sand like ostrich, we know that that goes back to Pliny the Elder in the 1st century of Common Era. He was a Roman author, and he came up, who knows why, with that idea that ostriches, when frightened, are sticking their head into sand. Have you heard that? Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's that. It's a prejudice or stereotype about those ostriches. It's unfair to them. They don't do that, ever. You know, occasionally they peck on stones which are helping them to digest. So that means that they put their head down to ground, but not under sand. When they are frightened, either they lay very flat, like stretching their neck down flat along the ground, and they look almost like a heap of shrubbery or something like that, nothing more. Or the other thing is that they run, and that is where book of Job is completely right, because they run very fast. But let me take those biblical verses from book of Job one by one, and we can discern what the Bible and what ostriches can teach us about living our lives as a community of faith. And so we start with ostrich flaps her wings futilely. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I never came across this word before. Futilely. All those beautiful feathers, but useless. And you probably saw that I dropped those feathers here. Those are the feathers. Sure, ostriches are flightless. We know that. Like so many other birds. Not all birds actually fly. Emus or kiwis from down under, they are not flying either. And there are many more who are not necessarily good flyers, or there are some who would not fly at all. But there is a good reason why ostriches don't fly. First, they are really big birds, and they would not be able to fly. No matter how big wings they might have or they would grow, either they'll be breaking those wings or they will simply not fly. Either they'll need to be much smaller birds, or they are to be flightless. But there is another reason with these feathers, because they have different function from flying. Normally birds have feathers for flying, but Janie, can you feel them? Oh, you probably know those feathers. Those are ostrich feathers. And they are like feathery down. That's what those really good pillows are made of. Of this. They are very, very soft, but they are also excellent form of insulation. And considering where they live, that makes very good sense, because this insulation is keeping them cool during the very, very, very hot days in their savannas and deserts. And at night, it keeps them warm, because savannas and deserts during night are freezing places. And these feathers are keeping those birds happy and cozy during the day and during the night. The plumage of ostriches might not be for flight, but it is far from useless. She lays her eggs on the ground, leaves them there in the dirt, exposed to the weather, not caring that they might be stepped on and cracked or trampled by some wild animals. Sure, ostriches nest on ground, and so do many other birds of deserts, savannas, or tundras, or in Antarctica. You probably heard about penguins. They are nesting on the ground. Anyhow, there are not that many trees there in savanna or in desert to build their nests, and we talked that they are flightless, and anyhow. But there is not true that ostrich eggs can be easily cracked. And here I'll ask Peter for the first picture. Here you see a guy standing on ostrich eggs. And he could have another person on his back, and those ostrich eggs will still not crack. You can put something like 200 pounds of weight on an ostrich egg, and it would not crack. They are about 1/4 inch thick, those shells, and they are round, which is an ideal shape for it to protect its content. They are very clever and very sturdy. So, they care for their eggs diligently. That's the other part. Ostrich hens protect their eggs during the day, protecting them like those feathers, protecting them from the heat so that they would not bake or cook. And male ostriches incubate them during night. They are diligent and caring parents. Here next, she is negligent with her young, as if they were not even hers. She cares nothing about anything. And yes, sure, ostriches do not feed their young in their nests like so many smaller birds do, who bring food to their still blind chicks, young. But, dear friends, it is absolutely not true that they don't care about their young ones. Peter, can you show us another yes? Here you see two hens, ostrich hens, caring for their young ones. And I think that I mentioned it earlier that several hens are actually laying eggs in one nest. And the same is true about their care for the young ones. They care for their chicks, whether they are their own or their neighbors or their sisters. They perhaps don't feed their chicks directly, but they bring them to food or to water, and they show them what to eat and how to eat it. So here you have another example that ostriches have communal rearing of their youngs. They have like nurseries or kindergartens or something like that where they care about them and they protect their chicks. They fight for them. She was not created very smart, that is for sure. Was not given her share of good sense. And yes, sure, ostriches look goofy. That's probably one of the reasons why they have so many prejudices about them. Strange. Big bodies, long legs, a little head on a very long neck. Can we have the picture? Oh, here we go. Yeah. But they have, for instance, perfect senses. They can hear and see danger long before that danger can see them. They see lions approaching or hyenas or wild dogs long before they actually know about ostriches. Ostriches must be quite well adapted also when you think about it, because they are flightless and yet not extinct. Many endemic flightless birds from islands went extinct as soon as those islands were discovered and reconnected with the rest of the world. Not so ostriches. They are marvelous survivors. Many and diverse adaptations. I'm mentioning only some of them, like caring for those young ones together and so on. They have a very unique way of breathing and cooling themselves, for instance. So these are the biblical prejudices about them, and there are many more adaptations. One feature which is mentioned in the Bible is actually, sure, true. That's what the Bible mentions with admiration. But when she runs, oh, how she runs, laughing, leaving horse and a rider in the dust. They can unrun almost or everything. They can run on this kind of terrain something like 50 miles per hour. Not even an all-terrain vehicle can do it in that terrain. You know, of course, on the road, yes. But on that rough terrain, it would be difficult for even a 4x4 to run this fast. That is a spur when they run fast. And they can sustain speed 30 miles per hour for hours. Think about it. They are marvelous runners. That is the thing which Bible got right. And one more thing. Ostriches not only run, they also are able to fight. They have a fatal kick. With one kick, they can kill a human or a lion. And they do so, especially if their brood is threatened. So, what we can learn from ostriches and extraposing that with the biblical testimony and our faith. First thing is that the Bible is not a textbook of biology. You heard that from me a number of times, or history or other things. You need to approach it critically and be prepared to revise that, as I did until now. We were revising that. The Bible is not a textbook. We are not fundamentalists insisting that it is exactly like written, because then what would he do with those ostriches? You know, they are out there. They clearly behave differently than it is described. Do we want to put blinders on our heads and saying, oh no, they are like it is in the Bible? No, that does not make sense. But second thing is that regardless what the Bible says, we can learn directly from ostriches about loving care. They give to their young ones. Maybe these prejudices, which are so clearly in conflict with the reality, are actually teaching us to open our minds to a real science, to open our mind to natural sciences, to nature around us, and be astonished. And they can also then teach us how to care for our young ones. All male and female caring for their chicks. Entire group caring for them collectively. Friends, I don't know, it's just a coincidence. I planned to preach on ostriches long time before the family came to me asking for baptism. But this is a marvelous illustration, isn't it? You know, asking you to care for Kian Bear. But we also, as a congregation here, promised, didn't we, to care for him as well? Or for our young ones, Kian Bear and all those other children. And those who are growing up into young men, like we had here just recently, confirmation. Duncan. That is a marvelous illustration here. Appropriate message for our Baptism Sunday. But we can go one step further. We can actually subtract from the Bible those prejudices I mentioned. We can take them away, delete them or subtract or filter them out. And Bible still has a very interesting identical message for us. It perhaps falsely blames ostriches for being careless parents, and I explained that it is not true, that they are smarter than we think. But then we hear in the Bible that they are not smart, that they were not given much reason. And regardless whether it is true or not, dear friends, we are proudly Homo sapiens sapiens. That means human, wise, as if repetition will make us any wiser than we are, frankly, but hopefully. And we definitely have much larger brains, and one would hope, are brighter and wiser than ostriches, at least hopefully in many respects. And so this biblical passage is a direct challenge to all of us. We were given by God. God gave us much larger and brighter brains to care for our children, all children, not only our own, for next generations, and leave for them world a better place. Hopefully starting with changing the world's trajectory. Of course, we cannot change what generations before us and ourselves did to this world. But we can change the trajectory at least in this moment, and from now on proceed in a right direction. And that is a challenge for all of us. We cannot change the world instantly, but we can start changing it now and for the future.